Cloud SQL instances. Hello everyone, this is Ben Finkel, and in this nugget we're going to talk all about Google Cloud SQL instances. We're going to answer the question, what are they, how do we make them, and how do we connect to them? In the world of Google Cloud SQL, an instance is just a virtual database that's created by you but hosted inside of Google's infrastructure. And what we mean by virtual database is we mean it's not a physical installation of the database software on a computer somewhere, but rather it is an in-memory database running in the memory of a shared environment, many computers collectively working together to host many servers or many instances inside of memory. This means that instances are completely decoupled from any specific hardware. Their memory is shared, their CPU power is shared. They're simply pulling from a larger pool of these resources to provide what you've requested when you provision your instances. Now, instances are created inside of a project, and a project, sort of the top-level organizational unit inside of your Google Cloud Platform, can have many instances, but any given instance only belongs to any one project at one time. So that's important to remember. For security purposes, the project is always the top-level controller for all of your instances. Now, the instances, when you create them, are typically created but not started until a connection request comes in. This is spin up on demand sort of thing. So the first request that hits your database is going to take a little bit longer because it'll wait for the instance to spin up before it's running. And then the instance will sit there and run, and once it's been idle for I think 4 hours is the default, it'll spin down and shut off again until another request comes in. Now, when we create instances, you can change that behavior if you would like, and you want to pay for an instance that's always running so that it responds to that first request more quickly. But generally speaking, this on-demand scale up and scale down is a really nice feature that's going to save you some money. So, by and large, the way you can think of it is an instance equals a database, more or less. When we're talking about instances, we're talking about databases. When you create your instances, there's a lot of different options for configuring them. But by and large, the most important option that you're going to choose is what tier of instance, or what size of database is this going to be. Tiers define the characteristics of your virtual instance that you create. Well, what characteristics are those? Those are things like the amount of RAM or volatile memory that are available to your instance. If you're using a pay per day or a packaged billing option, it's the amount of included storage and I operations in your price. It's also going to tell you how many concurrent connections your instance or your database can have. So if you look over here and you take a look at, say, D2 for instance, you can see that it's got a gigabyte of RAM. It includes in the per day price 2 gigabytes of storage. It includes 1.7 million IOPS in that per day price, which is, by the way, $2.93, and it can handle 250 maximum concurrent connections. So the tier is really defining the size of your database. You see they go D0 up to D12, which is a 16 gigabyte, pretty massive, impressive database. Now, while costs for Google Cloud SQL accrue on storage and IOPS and even a little bit of network traffic, by and large, the main determinant for your monthly cost is going to be the tier of database that you choose to create. A D0 database is going to accrue very minimal charges for you over the course of a month, while a D32, you can see is $35 a day at the package build rate, is going to accrue many charges for you over the course of a month. So when you're trying to plan out or estimate your costs, understand that the tier is going to be the most impactful or the most important decision you make about your database itself. The other important configuration option that you'll find in databases are regions. And regions are nothing more than geographic collections of data centers that Google allows you to create your Google Cloud Platform products inside of. You're going to need to choose a region when you create your database, and this is going to allow you to have it follow an App Engine or Compute Engine instance. And what that means is an App Engine instance is migrated automatically, mind you, across these different zones. You can set up your database instance to stay in the same zone as that App Engine instance, and that will reduce the latency between your database and that App Engine instance. It's also important to know what region you want to put your database in, because if you expect to consume it from a third-party resource that's largely in, say, Europe, then you want your database to be in the Europe West region, and that'll really reduce the latency between your third-party connections and your virtual database. Now that you understand what an instance is, let's talk about creating an instance, which is actually very easy to do inside of Google Cloud SQL. To create an instance, you have a couple of different options. The first one is the Developers Console. That's the web user interface built into your browser. This is maybe the easiest way to set up or create an instance inside of Cloud SQL. You simply log in, scroll down to your Cloud SQL menu and choose New Instance. When you do that, you're going to get a very simple, little straightforward form. It looks just like this. And it's going to ask you for 3 basic pieces of information in order to create this instance: the ID, the region, and the tier. You'll notice that it defaults to United States and Tier 1. You can override those, of course. Once you've done that, you click Save, and a few minutes later, your virtual instance is up and running inside of Google Cloud, or at least it'll be in a runnable state, which means the first time you try to connect to it, it will become up and running. Now you notice here that you have a Show Advanced Options button. That's going to do a couple of things for you. It's going to expose some different options that will let you more accurately configure your instance. You can choose your MySQL version. 5.5 is the only released version right now, but 5.6 is in beta. Maybe by the time you're watching this nugget, there's a 5.6 release available to you. You can also set up your billing plan, whether you want package billing or pay-per-use. You can choose an App Engine or Compute Engine instance to follow. You can schedule your backups. You can choose your activation plan. That's how you decide whether you want it activated on demand or if you want it always running. You can choose replication if you need it to replicate. You can assign an IP address, and you can set up network authorization so that the instance can be seen outside of the Google Cloud Network. The second way you can create an instance is a little more involved, but only slightly more so, and that's using the G-Cloud SDK, the command line interface, to create your instances. It's still pretty easy to do. For instance, a simple create instance command might look something like this: G-Cloud SQL instances create. Give it a name. I called it MySQL-instance. Give it a region, a tier if you'd like, an assign IP command if you'd like. Those are actually all optional commands, and there's a whole bunch more. Everything over here has a command, an optional command, inside of the Google Cloud SDK. So you can leave those as the defaults, or you can override them right there inside of the command. You can also describe an instance if you want to see an existing instance, what it looks like, what it's set up, or how it's configured. Simply call the G-Cloud SQL instances describe command. And you can list all of your instances, G-Cloud SQL instances list. You'll notice all of these follow the general G-Cloud SDK command pattern, which is G-Cloud product resource action. So G-Cloud SQL instances list, G-Cloud SQL instances describe. As you get more and more used to that pattern, you'll get more and more comfortable working with G-Cloud from the command line as opposed to the Developers Console, the web UI. They're both perfectly valid, one's not better than the other, but you'll find that it can often be quicker and easier to work straight from the command line. At least I do. Lastly, once you've created your instance, you're going to want to connect to it. Right? You're going to want to create users and tables, insert and update and query data. Well, before you can do that, you got to make sure that your instance is accessible. And in order to do that, you have to assign your instance an IP and authorize a network. Now, you could have done these things, assigning an IP and authorizing a network, during instance creation. You'll notice it was part of the advanced options. And that's fine. If you do that, then you don't need to do this. You've already done it once when you created your instance. But a lot of times you'll create an instance and then later down the line you want to open it up for accessibility. Well, that's easy to do. All you have to do is go to the web UI, load up your instance, choose the access control options, and simply choose to assign an IP and enter in your authorized networks. Your authorized networks are simply a whitelisted IP address or range of IP addresses, a subnet, that is allowed to see and allowed to connect to your virtual database. The IP address is the external IP address that your database is going to expose to the world outside of the Google Cloud Platform. So in order to access or connect to your database, say from your desktop, you're going to need to do those things. Now, if you're only connecting to your database from a Google App Engine account, you can simply give an App Engine, an authorized App Engine application name down here, and that will limit connectivity to that App Engine account. You don't need an IP address, you don't need an authorized network in order to connect to it from a Google App Engine account. Once you've done that, you're ready to connect to your instance. Well, there's a whole host of different ways you can do that. You can, of course, connect with the MySQL Workbench locally from your desktop. All you have to do is download and install the Workbench, set up a new connection, and use the IP address that you just assigned it in order to connect. You'll also want to make sure that you set a root password so that you can use a root password to connect over here from MySQL database. If you don't want to use the MySQL Workbench, you can also use the MySQL command line client. That's part of the MySQL packages tools as well. That will allow you to use a command line client to connect up to your MySQL server, your virtual instance, and execute whatever SQL commands you need to execute. You can also use the client API libraries. Those are things inside of Java or .NET or Python that allow you to programmatically connect up to and work with your database, update data, insert, delete, query, etc. Or, of course, you can use any other third-party tool. That's the great thing about Google Cloud SQL is it's just a MySQL database inside of the cloud. That means it uses the MySQL wire protocol, and anything that connects to a MySQL database will connect to your Google Cloud SQL instance as long as you have the network authorized and the IP address assigned. That concludes this nugget on Google Cloud SQL instances. We learned all about Google Cloud SQL instances, how they're just virtual databases that run in memory on Google's hosted infrastructure. They're managed by Google, but created and set up by you and I, the users. We talked about how you can create instances by logging in through the web UI or using the Google Cloud command line client, and also how you can connect to instances after you've assigned them an external IP and authorized or whitelisted IP addresses and networks to connect to them. I hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.